Okay, well, it says we're streaming here. The long and the short of it, I had to get another computer because the computer that I last did this on was just had all kinds of problems without going into detail. And so I got another one, but unfortunately, they kind of shorted me on the video department. I ordered a certain standard of video card and they gave me less quality. So this is my test to see whether or not I want to keep this computer and whether it's going to work good enough or whether I'm going to have to send it back and try again for the third time. Okay, so just to make some content here, this is Anecdotal Evidence. Welcome to Anecdotal Evidence. Coming to you live from the Thunderdome. At the moment, it's a little chilly in here, so I'm waiting for the stove to warm it up in here. I just started it about 20 minutes ago, and this is a large space, so it takes about that long or so to start even warming up. At least you can't see my breath, so I know it's working. All right, well, let's get into anecdotal evidence. In relationship to all of the stories that I've told you thus far, I might have stated this, but I'm getting old. I can't remember everything I've said. I mean, I remember all the stories because I've told them a gazillion times. Well, maybe not that much. There's a point. The reason why I told those stories, first of all, in the consecutive order that I did, was to outline a process of, the dot connection that I did in my own life. But the point of telling you these stories, in which I am the core figure in the story, I'm the one having the experience, is, first of all, I know that I'm not the only one that has had experiences like the ones I've related. Many people throughout the centuries and thousands of years I've had epiphanies and spiritual visions and everything else, all of which are valid. And the interpretation is where the problems come in. It's when we start interpreting these things, or according to what a lot of us wishfully think they are. That's when we lose the importance and the validity of the content. And that's what anecdotal evidence is all about. And that's why I tell the stories as objectively as I can, even though I am a storyteller, so I do embellish a little bit. But the facts are still the same. The stories are factual. They are not, invented. I don't make anything up in the stories. I try to be as objective as possible in telling of them. The point in the stories is to let you all know, if you can see it, that this is my credibility, my credentials for actually being believed for the things that I've said in these stories, because these stories all represent greater things than the normalcy of living in 21st century world that we live in. I mean, they're related for sure, but they're extraordinary experiences. At the time that I had most of my experiences, it seemed to me there wasn't a whole lot of people at least reporting on them. I didn't find anyone else until much later in my life that had had similar experiences. So for the most part, I had to struggle with my own veracity within myself as to whether or not I could trust my own experience, and I struggle with that quite a bit. I'm here to tell you that at this point in 2023, almost 2024, that I've seen enough and had enough come down the pipe to let me know that my experiences were valid. The ones that weren't valid, I know that too. And I don't tell you those. Okay, so after all of that, I'm at this point where some things have to be recognized. First of all, we are in a war. It's not one that most people choose to acknowledge, and they usually, because of that, they end up becoming used in that war, or victimized, or whatever, all kinds of different levels. Because the only way to prevent that is to, first of all, be aware there is one. And in the process of becoming aware that there's a war, and that ultimately you are forced to choose a side, and in the sense of what Yeshua said in his in his gospel and his words, and it's out of context, but it relates anyway. It's not out of context with what I'm saying, and that is the phrase which most people may be familiar with, which is, let your yeas be yeas and your nays be nays. And if you are lukewarm, and you be hot or cold, but if you're lukewarm, I will spew you out of my mouth. And that's a paraphrase, meaning that you have to choose. You can't sit on the fence and occupy the middle ground between what's going on in this war. And so hopefully most people, when they realize there's a war going on and that humanity itself is kind of the prize, then they might be motivated to choose the right side. And the right side, of course, is truth, love, spirit, and consciousness, and other aspects that go along with that. And once you've recognized there's a war and you've chosen sides, then you have to progress towards the goal, and the goal is your own consciousness, particularly at this moment in time, because I recognize, and you'll see it in the stories, that there was this war going on probably 30, 40 years ago, and yet I didn't have any actions to take other than just say, oh, this crazy crap's going on, and hardly anybody believed me. But at this point in time, in 2023, we have crossed certain thresholds. Sometime in the first decade of the 21st century, what we're calling, and what many people are referring to as the Great Awakening, is happening, and it's all relative to the stories, in the sense that I've been on this path. So my credentials as a spiritual seeker, my credentials as a human being, is between me and spirit. However, my credentials as a knowledgeable, spiritually oriented man are why I told these stories. So now we know that we're in this war. The solution to winning this war is one word. It's consciousness. Because the more people that are conscious in the ultimate sense, not in the common colloquial senses, having your eyes open and responding to stimuli in the so-called awake world. And I don't mean awakened, I mean awake. And in the normal sense of the word, you get up in the morning, you have your coffee, you wake up, eat breakfast, then you go through your day, and through that whole day you're in a state of being awake in that sense, but not necessarily in a consciousness sense. So the solution to the war, to win the war, is consciousness. And that is not something that, unfortunately, can really be taught. Information could be shared, knowledge could be shared, and experience can back up that knowledge and make it verifiable or give it validity, which is, again, the reason why I told these stories, because I want the conclusions and understanding to be validified. I don't really care about the association of me with these experiences, because the whole point of anecdotal evidence is that Many people have these experiences. They just haven't, up till this point, come together and shared them, because once they do, then they're no longer anecdotal evidence. They have there's a witness going on, and the witnesses are real important. So there's a war. Consciousness is the solution, and as I see going into 2023, there's two movements. There's the last ditch effort of the proverbial beast or adversarial spirit and mind, which is trying to cling on to its power and its existence as a parasite, because it is. The adversarial spirit and the nature of it is parasitical. And there's other attributes that people would like to talk about related to the devil, Satan, Lucifer, all that, which is all relative as well. But it's for someone who's really seeking the truth to be able to be objectively aware and conscious and awake, then you can't just go down one of these tributaries of special attributes. Like, for example, you just can't say everything is Lucifer. Although in a metaphorical, allegorical sense, the adversarial forces, everything about it is. And yet there's more to it. And the understanding is important. And another part of that understanding is knowing who and what your adversary is. Because if you're in a war, and we know the solution now is consciousness. And ultimately, as one achieves consciousness, the things they do is they stop giving power to the beast, to that Luciferian, adversarial, satanic energy, demonic, whatever word suits your preference. But the more conscious we get, the more aware we are in the decisions that we make. Like, personally speaking, just briefly, at this point in my life, I'm in my 70s, and I'm actually going to therapy to deal with PTSD triggering, which started with me, many, many years ago, and was totally absolutely amplified within the military service, as a lot of veterans would understand. So I'm actually going to therapy at this point so that I can actually stop being triggered without my consent, because I'm tired of, even though it's minor in a certain sense, but it's not in its effects. I mean, it's like, me, going off and cursing and everything else because I'm angry at the situation. Like, for example, my computer's not working. That may sound innocuous, and there's nobody getting hurt by it, so to speak, but I'm hurting myself. And if someone else is around, then I'm hurting them. So I'm actually, not that it really matters, but I am. That's an example, though, that I'm using about where we're at. It's like the changes that any one of us has to make in our consciousness is we can get guidance, we can get help, and it's real important to have someone that you can talk to, a good friend, a loved one, someone that allow you to be you without having or saying things that would absolutely, trigger you into doing things you don't want to do. So, war, consciousness, adversary. If you're in a war, in a battle, from a military stance, you would necessarily have to have information or intelligence on the enemy. You wouldn't just go into the thing blind. You would find out what they've got for weaponry, what they've got for resources, manpower, all that stuff, so that you can prepare for it long before you actually plan on engaging. So if you take consciousness as our army, each one of us, the more of us become conscious, then that becomes an army. Now, who's leading that army? Well, that's something that we're going to get to a little bit farther down the line, but it's not up to me. I have my opinions and my beliefs, but I can't dictate who that is or what that is, other than consciousness itself. I actually believe that if we all achieved, the highest state of consciousness here on the earth that is possible, then then our collective consciousness would be that leader or that general in this war. But intelligence needs to be gathered. It's only started coming out in the past 20 years or so about the adversarial, the enemy, right? And the enemy has many names, but its spirit and its vibration is the same. So if one can identify the distinction between the vibrational spirit of adversary and the vibrational spirit of love, compassion, empathy, sharing, and all those many other positive attributes of spirit and truth and love, if one can distinguish the vibrational frequency between those two powers that are at struggle in this war, then consciously we begin to be able to say no, like me in my therapy, to these negative vibrational energies which have literally ruled us and this whole planet for over 10,000 years. So that's part of the solution of the consciousness. But it's been my important job, I'm not alone, fortunately, to provide intelligence and information on the nature of the adversary. Now, at this point, there's many references out there on the internet which could really help one identify what that is. And one of the ones that leaps into my mind is David Icke, because I've been following him for a long time, and I respect him a lot. And he and I are the same age, and so we went through the same generational things. I don't agree with everything. Of course, I don't agree with everything. Nobody's going to agree with everything I say. That's not the point. The point is that his allegory and his stories and his tales are about the same truths. So he's a good person to start with, and there are others out there which I can't recommend because most of the ones I might recommend turn out not too far down the line just to be, modern internet new age charlatans, which are jumping on the bandwagon of the spiritual awakening and, basically raking in bucks for doing it. So there's a whole lot of that going on, and there's only a handful of sincere people. It's almost as if even though we got this internet, it might as well not be there for the amount of ability it is to connect with real, sincere people, because the internet is inundated with the absolute opposite. The last gasp vestiges of the adversary have totally, got their claws and their meat hooks into our technology, and in fact, using the technology as weaponized against us in the last stages of this war. It's been said by a few people, and as well as myself, that we have to not look at the technology in the way in which we're doing it. People are treating technology almost like God. And I'm not even getting into AI. But the technology, the internet, and everything else preoccupies us so much. And believe me, I know, because I dove deep into it as a computer technician, as a gamer, as a musician, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I really got into it, and I actually appreciated it at first. And I still do appreciate it as a tool, but here that's the crux right there, is that it's hard to just use it as a tool because it's a multifaceted thing. It's a virtual reality at this point. Everything about the computer is all virtual reality, so we basically end up being way distracted more and not spending time with each other, not putting power into living energies and consciousness. We just end up basically, doing these patterns which are linked into the technology over and over and over again, just like I'm in a job every day. So ultimately, we have to find a balance at the very least. We have to make an effort to gather physically, And in my own interest, I insist that we play music and that we have art and poetry and performance and all these things which are part of our highest human attributes, which have been totally twisted by the established industries like the music industry and Hollywood. All those aspects which are, human art has been totally twisted by the establishment because, the truth is that the reptilian consciousness, and I like that phrase, even if I don't necessarily agree with some of the connotations, the reptilian consciousness has no art. They have no creativity. They're absolutely parasitically dependent on the rest of us humans to supply their entertainment and their art and everything else. And there's plenty of anecdotal evidence for that throughout history. So my point in all this is, and I'll reiterate it again, we're at war. Consciousness is the solution. And identification of the adversary we're up against is very important at this point in time, particularly since information is available to anyone who wants to find it. So that's what these three, today, my anecdotal evidence is about, is those three things. And my stories talk about various different things. Each one of those stories has a significant point, which is why I told them. And if this is a decent streaming quality, then my next stream I'll start in on explaining or giving my conclusion as to what those experiences meant to me and what they revealed to me in my spiritual quest. Well, I hope this worked, and I know there's nobody watching it because I didn't warn anybody because it's a test. Although I'm going to send myself a like on the chat just to see if it works. Okay. So that's it. Hang on a second. It wants me to sign in. So let me try this. Because this is a test after all. I hate passwords, by the way. I hate them. And of course, I have to do, my phone has to tell me, yes, it was me, blah, blah. Okay, I just wanted to see if I could get into the chat on the live stream. Okay. Okay. Sorry for the absolute not. Oh, got to go through all this. Oh, welcome to live chat. Okay, let's see. I got to send something. Oh, I got to send myself a heart. Okay. And send myself a message. All right. Okay. So the chat works in that sense. So that's a test. Okay. So that's the end of this episode. I think it's probably officially episode 8, but I'm not sure. Actually content. So if it's any decent, I'll leave it up. So until next time, which will be 2024, I will continue the series of anecdotal evidence, and we'll discuss these things. So I hope I gave you something to think about. You have a good holiday season, and we'll talk to you soon.